Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 11, Episode 84. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Glad you guys are back with us for this Wednesday show. Dave, I know we debated if we were going to have a Wednesday show on Monday, depending on the news cycle, but the news cycle has given us plenty to work with as Big Ben is coming back for 2021.
Yeah, wow. Feels like we should open up this episode with a quote from Are we sure that Jerry Seinfeld and Kramer and Elaine are all made it on time for this show and all? Because we're probably going to need them quite a bit today. You know, the sea was angry that day, my friend. That's what probably a lot of people listening to this show today probably feel like, but. Man, a lot has happened in the last 48 hours, right?
Yeah, I think the way I would sum up the speculation about Ben and, oh my goodness, the sky is falling, Colbert hates him, he's going to move on, is the old George Costanza. It's not a lie if you believe it. And that's, I think, maybe the way some people had convinced themselves. But as I think we've suspected that all along, the most likely solution was for them to work things out financially. And that is what the Steelers have said. Ben met with team president Art Rooney II yesterday. That meeting reportedly went well. And then Art Rooney issued a statement today in part saying that he won spend back in 2021.
So in other words, what you're telling me is this was in essence, this was the shortest really big game of chicken ever, right? As one NFL Network reporter stated. Where do you want to start? They obviously don't want us patting ourselves on the back today, so we'll refrain from that, I think. Where do you want to start on this?
Well, I mean, I would start with the question is, are you surprised by this? But I don't think either of us are surprised by this. I think we've laid out the reasons why we've expected Ben to come back this entire time. Even, I think, putting in context the comments that Colbert made last week, this was always a financial issue. It really wasn't an issue about do they think Ben can play or not, or were they ready to really turn the page? It was just, trying to deal with this messy cap situation, in a time of extreme uncertainty and a cap crunch league wide. So once you get past that, then I think you can figure that aspect of it out, and then Ben comes back. So none of the comments here from the Steelers are surprising to me, and I imagine that's the same for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, could Kevin Colbert have helped maybe lessen the hogwash? I talk to you and Matthew all the time when about things in direct message. Man, it was so irritating what went on Monday there, and with the drama, all the dramatization out there and all like that. But deep down in my heart all along, look, I view this as being kind of written on the wall going all the way back to August. This, I'm not getting into the right or wrong aspect of it because time is only going to tell as far as that goes there. But you could see what all is transpiring now, kind of, the footprint for it way back in August, I think. Look, if we are to believe and a lot of the opinion and speculation of what at least I have been putting out there, and I believe you as well too, is built on what we think will happen. And to me, that's what we are paid to do is to, as best we can objectively look at this, decipher, read the tea leaves, Blues Clues, whatever, and then just try to prep, there was no sense entertaining thoughts on trading for Deshaun Watson. We're not doing our listeners, I don't think, any bit of good in going down roads such as that. It's in our best interest, we feel, when it comes to the site in this show, to try to best speculate about things related to the Steelers and how things might turn out. And if we are to believe that the organization has the motto, at least with Kevin Colbert, that the goal year in, year out is to put the best team on the field as possible to compete for a Super Bowl championship, which obviously should be every team's motto. But if knowing the standards that the Steelers have set over the years, if we are to honestly believe that they believe that, whether you do or don't, from a fan or from an analyst perspective, then the decision to bring Ben back was the most likely outcome to achieve that goal in 2021. Now, is it a tough road? Obviously, we've said all along, we thought 2020 was going to be the single best season chance for this team to win a championship, perhaps in a couple of years. And obviously 2021 is going to, you look at the schedule, you look at some of the pieces that are likely to be lost this offseason free agency wise. You look at how the defense might take a step backward to some degree. Even so, the best shot, once again, if you believe the organization's stance that their goal is, and they honestly believe that they can put together something that will compete for a championship, then the return of Ben Roethlisberger in 2021 has to be part of that. Good, whether or not it'll happen, whether or not this thing goes to 6-10 or 6-11, however many games the 2021 season has, that was the most likeliest outcome here. Now, look, the cap situation with the COVID and all like that made it even more difficult to accomplish that goal. If we're looking at a cap number of 10, maybe 12, 15, had there not been a COVID, type situation, then obviously it makes it a lot easier to bring Ben back and do so with, not doing a proverbial kick the can down the road there. But to me, I never had much doubt that this was ultimately going to be the way that this thing played out.
Same. It just came down to two things for me. A, did Ben want to come back? Clearly. He made that abundantly clear after the season, even after he probably knew Pouncey was retiring and Advance was going to retire and those pieces were going to be lost. Ben wanted to come back. And so the other element was, do the Steelers want him back? Do the Steelers view him as their best option in 2021? And I think the answer to that has to be yes, because what better option do they have? Now, you could argue that option isn't good enough, and I am very pessimistic about their Super Bowl chances in 2021, but he is clearly their best option. And bringing Ben back in no way, at least in my opinion, in no way should prevent this team from potentially drafting a quarterback if they view somebody as the future and the heir to Ben. So you combine those three things, and it comes down just to a matter of the financials, which are messy but are also fixable, and that's the scenario that we're playing out today.
Look, neither one of us yesterday, when the news broke, put on, clicked on "Here We Go Steelers" song, and get our,
Speak for yourself.
We're going to the Super Bowl.
3 points off of Jeff Fried's toe.
Neither, but this was the most likeliest outcome, and then now, assuming things go as we think they're going to play out here over the course of the next couple of weeks here, and Art Rooney said as much, this morning in a statement, and it's Captain Obvious. Now they just got to work out, the financials of this, and to hear. Or to read what Ryan Tolner has said, Ben's agent, and to read what Art Rooney II's put out there, and to just kind of rewind all that's happened over the course of since almost the end of the regular season there. They're going to do something that will lower Ben's cap number from $41.25, and then probably no new money. It's probably just going to be a simple situation like I've written since August of turning a large portion of the $19 million that he's due in 2021 into a signing bonus. And now we wait to see if if it's a 4-year extension, if it's a 2-year extension, if it's a 3-year extension. But it's more than likely going to be something along those lines, Jerry Dulac, and you got to be kind of careful with this, these kind of reports, but he put it out there, and I wanted to make sure that I framed it exactly the way Jerry Dulac put it out there, so people don't come back at me and says, well, you wrote this. Jerry Dulac, in his article yesterday afternoon, wrote that the plan is for the Steelers to essentially extend Ben by 2 years and take a large chunk of that $19 million that he's owed, which specifically would be $17.925 million, turn it into a signing bonus, and then prorate it over the 3 years of the deal, the 2-year extension, and obviously this year as well, too. And if indeed, that's a big if, because, I mean, the ink's not dry on this thing yet. If they go that route, they would create $11.95 million in 2021 salary cap space. So now we sit and wait to see the financials on this. I would think that, there's probably, they probably have to work out, I would guess they probably have to work out some language as to what's going to happen in maybe 2022. Is that going to be automatically a voidable year just on the calendar? Is it going to be something either side can void, or will it be something along the lines maybe of what the Saints had, kind of in line with Drew Brees this season here? The best case scenario is this, regardless of the amount of years extended, whether it be 2, 3, or 4. Obviously, the most that you can save is the $14.34 million by doing the 4-year kind of faux extension, if you will. But the best case scenario, kind of overall in this, is they set up 2022 as being the ejection seat year, something along the lines where they say, that's it, Ben. Will you please lower your base salary down to the minimum? And will you please then not retire until after June the 1st so we can take whatever, dead money there is and split it up over the 2022 and 2023 season. Right now, based on what Jerry Dulac has out there thinking is going to be the course of action, the Steelers are setting themselves up for an $11.95 million dead money charge in some way, shape, or form. Now, obviously, that might have to be eaten all in 2022 if a post-June 1st situation is not included in this plan for 2022, or you would split it up based on Dulac's example. It would be almost $6 million per year in dead money in 2022 and 2023, should they be able to get in a situation like the Saints are doing this offseason with Drew Brees.
Right, and we shouldn't ignore that aspect of the dead money, but predicting, I think it's a pretty easy prediction to make, the cap is going to shoot up for 2022 and beyond. That dead money is going to be pretty insignificant, and especially if you can spread that out over 2 years in the post-June 1st, cut.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would think that some of that's going to be, I would at least hope that some of that's going to be, but regardless, let's say the number is $11.95 million and they have to eat that in 2022 and there's no post-June 1st situation. Assuming the cap, and that's, dangerous to do with the cap and obviously still with an ongoing pandemic here right now. But assuming the cap does shoot up, that will be a smallish kind of can, that got kicked in the middle of the street there. And I know a lot of people.
How much money did they eat with AB when they traded him? It was more than that, wasn't it?
Right, $20-something million, yeah. Right?
And they had a franchise quarterback they were paying at the time, so
right.
You absorb that, you can absorb this.
Right.
So, and I just think from an on-field perspective, the Steelers mentality, and I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, was that, to my mind, and maybe to their mind in an honest moment, are they a legitimate Super Bowl contender? No. But are they still able to win the North, able to make the playoffs? Yes. And you get in the playoffs, and you never know what's going to happen from there. You get hot, there's an injury, you get a good bounce your way, a good call, who knows what can happen. So as long as the Steelers view themselves as legitimate playoff contenders, which they are, they're still going to push hard to compete and try to go for it. And that means having number 7 on your team.
Now let's people talk I figure there's our listenership's probably divided in thirds. A third are probably okay with what's happened with Ben. A third probably just despise what happened with Ben, and the other third just would rather me just shut the hell up. But let's look at let's go in on the other side of the fence here and what this might. I have always, and you know this, and I think I've said this on the podcast and tweeted or written about this as well too. This should not at least totally eliminate the possibility of the Steelers drafting a quarterback in the first round. If there's one that falls to them that they like, or B, there's one that's affordable to move up in the draft to get. They should not ignore the quarterback position if given the opportunity to get a kid they like, quote unquote. Well, it really should be more. It should be one they love. It should be obviously one that they think can be a franchise quarterback. Not just anybody. Well, this one fell. Let's go after him. Sure. I imagine there's probably going to be possibly two that maybe they think, okay, all right, maybe. Obviously, a couple of them are not going to have any chance at getting. There's probably going to be one or two of them that they say, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. And then maybe one or two others. But there's not an easy button that you just push and say, let's move up, and go get this quarterback. A lot of people think it's that way, but you can't overpay in these type of situations. But at the same time, you've got to make the phone calls on top of it. And I would hope at least that they go into this draft thinking, okay, we're going to look at this thing. We're going to evaluate the quarterback positions because sooner or later they're going to draft one, right? At least we think in the next couple of years, either this year or next year. Get into practice of doing that, and once again, if there's one that they like, get him, all right? And then you set yourself up to kind of have the best of three worlds, so to speak. In other words, you start the season with Ben Roethlisberger. If things are going great, fantastic. If things go off the rails in a hurry, somebody's got to be responsible enough at that point to push the eject button, all right? Now, do we have confidence that they will be able to do that with a Hall of Fame quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger at 2 and 6? Whatever you deem is the proper eject button spot there. It is in their best. It would be in their best interest to do that, and then at that point you can decide. Do we want to take a little bit longer look at Mason Rudolph here, and or a drafted rookie? Or Dwayne Haskins, whoever is your number 3 at that point there, and then you obviously would probably have probably a little less than a half a season to evaluate that. So, do they owe it to themselves to still look hard and heavy at the quarterback position in this year's draft? Absolutely, you would agree, and I would imagine you agree on that, and. If they can't get the quarterback of their dreams, at any point in this draft, then obviously you go into the season with Mason Rudolph and Dwayne Haskins and move forward from there with potentially the eye on getting the guy in 2022.
Sure. My mentality hasn't changed at all with this Ben news, where I stand by what I had written a couple weeks ago, that the mentality has to be that you have to look hard and heavy for a franchise quarterback. Now, maybe you don't find him. Maybe you don't get him for whatever reason. The one thing I would disagree with what you said, though, Dave, the only thing I would disagree with is that I would overpay to get that quarterback, only because I don't believe you can overpay for a quarterback if you believe he is a franchise quarterback. Now, of course, you can be wrong about that, and you'll look dumb in hindsight 5 years from now. But if you believe he's your guy, there, to me, is almost no such thing as overpaying for that guy if you have to trade up and get Trey Lance or Mac Jones.
I'm using that loosely as in, like,
sure.
3 first-round draft picks,
Right.
Yeah, I mean, look, if it's a guy that you think can be the guy, I mean, okay, all right, maybe it is worth 3 first round draft picks. I mean, if you're convinced that kid can be the next guy, then yeah, I mean, if you think you have the next Tom Brady or whoever, by all means, but don't just do it just to go up and do it for a kid, So
or even just sit at 24 and just take the guy that falls to you if you don't love him. I mean,
right.
You got to love this guy to draft him because he's going to be the guy that dictates the next 5 to 10 years of your whole franchise.
And look, the Steelers aren't going to be the only team probably looking maybe to move up. To get one too, and once again, it's just not as easy as pushing the button. A trade's got to be offered, a trade's got to be accepted when you get into these situations. But the long story short, the idea you got to go into this draft open to the idea of drafting a quarterback in the first round, whether it be 24 or whether it be move up. As long as you make the honest commitment to do that, then you've done your job. I feel when it's the Steelers front office here.
Sure. An article I wrote this morning, and I was initially going to frame it as, before the Ben news came out yesterday afternoon, that the only reason the Steelers would even consider moving on from Ben would be for really one reason. And to me, one reason only, at least one potentially arguable, valid reason, would be to view Mason Rudolph for one full season as the starter in 2021. If you really wanted to see what you had in Rudolph, if you felt like he could be the franchise guy, that to me was the only reason the Steelers would or should move on from Ben for 2021. And to me, that wasn't a good reason because I don't think Rudolph is that guy. But to me, if you're the Steelers, that was the only case I think you could sincerely, legitimately make to move on from Ben, was because you wanted to get a full evaluation of Mason Rudolph before his rookie contract expired.
All right, now here's the thing. What if they had moved on from Ben, okay, and they did ultimately get in a position where they were able to draft a first-round quarterback? Who was going to be your starter to open the season?
It's a good question. Probably still Rudolph. I would imagine they would just let that play out in camp, but probably Rudolph to at least start the season.
Right. Now, you can still get in that same, and then obviously if things got sideways, then, at some point during halfway through the season, you could get the rookie in there, right?
Right, yeah. Either Rudolph would play well and you're happy about his play, or he's not playing well and you're probably ready to look at the rookie because Rudolph's not coming back anyway. So that to me was the reason to move on from Ben for the Steelers, was to look at Rudolph. Obviously not a good enough reason for me, and not evidently a good enough reason for the Steelers.
All right, and they can still get in to look at the other, whomever quarterback on the roster in 2021 with Ben back if things go off the rails as well too.
Yeah, I mean, if things go that sideways, then sure, you could play Rudolph or another quarterback, Haskins, at the end and see what you have there. But hopefully it doesn't go that way. I don't think it will, because I think this team will at least still be competitive until the end.
The biggest fear of people listening is, oh, Lord, here we go. 10-6, 10-7. Maybe that's too optimistic for several listening. Maybe it's 8-8 or 8-9, whatever. But the worst fear, I can hear them yelling at me right now. The worst fear is they get back, either A, make the playoffs and get bounced early, or don't make the playoffs at all. And then they didn't have any time to groom any kind of a young quarterback. Mason Rudolph bails after the season, and then they view it as a lost season, and then, oh yeah, they're probably going to be drafted 20th or whatever. We have understood the other side of the fence for some time now, right? I mean, and at no point are we. People probably say, "Where do you stand on this? Is this the right or wrong decision?" If you put your hand to the fire there and ask to say, "Is this the right or wrong decision?" How would you respond?
I think it's the right decision. I said I wanted Ben to come back, and I'm glad that he is back.
I think it's the right decision too, as long as they do the things that I think they should do, and that's be open to drafting a quarterback, and then having being responsible enough at some point during the 2021 season, should it go sideways and be irretrievable. And that, there's a fine line in that, obviously. But somebody's got to make the grown-up decision to push the eject button in 2021, should it need to be pushed. And whether or not the backside of the fallout from that eject button is a drafted quarterback on the roster, or Mason Rudolph, or Dwayne Haskins, somebody's got to make the grown up decision when it gets to that point, and then you go from there. Because look,
Right.
even if you didn't bring Ben back this year, do you honestly think there's no guarantee you're able to move up and get the guy that you want in the draft, and B, there's no Did we really think they were going to have a shot? Look, Deshaun Watson would look absolutely fabulous. It would be so fun to cover him in a Steelers uniform. But what is the likelihood of something like that happening if Ben had not returned?
Yeah, still very low, I think.
I mean, you could obviously make the attempt, but once again, there's no guarantee like something like that happens there. So, look, you can frame this. You gave it the old college try with Ben Roethlisberger if things go south, and then move forward from there. It's not. It's never been an ideal situation from the moment they lost to Cleveland in the playoffs moving forward, because of the cap situation, because of COVID, because of Ben and his age, because of Ben's contract situation, because of the 19 unrestricted free agents. It's never been an ideal situation here. However, it has, in my opinion, been a fairly predictable one along the way here.
Yeah, and just to address the concern that the hypothetical you had posed a moment ago about, you're a middling team, let's just keep it at 16 games to make the math easy on me. Let's say you go 10-6 or 9-7 and you're still picking in the 20s. That's a valid concern and criticism.
Sure.
That's one that quite frankly, I share. I kind of think that's maybe the most likely option that happens, where this is another good but not great team and you're kind of in the same boat a year from now. But just to play devil's advocate to that, even if you dump Ben and started Rudolph, obviously you're going to be a worse team, but you're not going to be a top 5, pick worse team. You're not going to be a 4-12 club. I mean, heck, you went 8-8 with Rudolph, 2 years ago as a rookie. You're probably then going to be, say, a 7-9 team with Mason Rudolph leading the chart. So you'd have a higher draft pick, but you're not going to be picking in the top 5 with this team. So it's not like dumping Ben to tank for a quarterback next year is probably going to play out cleanly either.
Right, exactly. Throwing Mason Rudolph in there does not guarantee you going 6-10.
Right, or even or be the worst team in football. You're not going to be 3-13 with this team, even with Rudolph, at the helm. So the idea of dump Ben because you go to Rudolph and that somehow I'm not even sure what the argument there was, but basically saying that if you're a worse team next year, you'd be bad with Rudolph, then you draft a quarterback in the top 5 or something like that, probably wasn't the scenario that was going to play out. You'd be a worse team, you'd have a higher draft pick, sure, but it would be maybe 5 to 7 picks higher, 24 compared to picking at 17 or 18.
All right, and here's the thing that's also, people are probably saying, man, really wanted to get the future quarterback at some point this offseason, whether it be Watson, Sam Darnold, go down the list. I mean, whatever the flavor of the week is there. People are angry about that, and or an early round draft pick, which once again you're not guaranteed. You're not guaranteed to get. And look, I mean, the success rate of early draft picks. Anyway, if this was such a science, everybody'd be doing it and doing it well, right? But only one team wins the Super Bowl every year. Did you see the list of the AFC quarterbacks since 2004 that I politely put out on the Twitter machine there? The AFC quarterbacks that have won the Super Bowl since Ben has been in the league in 2004. It's not very long.
So I saw the teams. It was 5 teams I think have won the AFC title.
Well, it's obviously the Patriots, it's obviously the Steelers, it's obviously the Broncos, the Colts, the Chiefs, right?
Is that it?
I don't have it in front of me, but it feels
that sounds right.
Feels like it's hold on a minute, I'll double check my I should have this.
I mean, that sounds right. I mean, Brady's been in the title every single year, and obviously the dude's been to 10 Super Bowls, 9 with the Patriots, so there's 9 of those years right there.
Oh, we forgot an easy omission, Joe Flacco. because of that defense, though, right? In running game, less about Joe Flacco, but the quarterback. And look, what you're getting at is only 5 quarterbacks, right? Because Manning was a part of 2 of those. He's part of the Broncos and the Colts, right?
Right. There you go.
So you have Brady, Roethlisberger, Manning, Flacco, Mahomes. That's a
small list.
Yeah, that's not an excuse for anything, but I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it just goes to show, especially on the AFC side, and I would imagine. I mean, what would the list look on the NFC side? Obviously, you have the Seahawks in there.
You would have a much longer list.
Brady in there, Aaron Rodgers obviously in there, but franchise guys nonetheless, mostly, right?
Yeah, you'd have to look at the whole list, but it's probably not as exclusive as a club because you have the Rex Grossmans in there on the NFC side of things, but point taken.
All right. Let's, I mean, look, long story short, they need to look at the quarterback position. No, I know where I was going with this. What's next for Mason Rudolph?
Yeah, that's partially what I wrote in the article today, was that knowing that Ben's coming back, I mean, I don't know what the future holds for Rudolph. They'll have a decision to make, I guess, after 2021 in terms of some way to try to retain him if they want to, but clearly they're never, or at least are unlikely to get a full evaluation of Rudolph unless Ben gets hurt or the season goes sideways.
Juju has told TMZ that...
Oh, that's a dangerous way to start.
Gunning to be a Steeler for life. I want my legacy in Pittsburgh.
All right, so very boilerplate stuff. So okay,
what is that? What does that even? What is that? Describe the meaning of boilerplate. Average, run of the mill.
I don't know. Yeah, just player speak. Okay. Just standard. And it's fine. He's saying the right things, and obviously everyone circles every single thing that Juju says. So I'm not mad at him for saying the right things and things like that. But you put very little stock into those comments.
All right, back to Mason Rudolph here. I mean, the odds of signing him to an extension this offseason have been very low all along and got a little bit lower in the last 48 hours there. To me, also, he'd be quite silly to sign a deal right now. Especially as low as what the say a Landry Jones deal a couple years ago. Remember, they even let Landry Jones hit free agency, did they not? And then re-sign him there, or right there at the start. I forget the timing. Was it right before the start of the new league year, or right after? Regardless, it was a very cheap deal that Landry returned on. Odds are probably good. I mean, they would have to look at it. If they let Mason, true or false, if they let Mason Rudolph hit free agency, the start of the 2022 league year, Mason will not be back.
True.
I agree. So they would have to do something with Mason next offseason prior to the start of the new league year. And obviously it's hard to even quantify what the market value would be, right? I mean, we could probably say that we think that it's going to be low, and who's to say they would even want to re-sign him? Let's say the you go over the train tracks and you lose the hubcap or two there. Another Mason Rudolph meltdown. At some point during the 2021 season there, you might get to a point where you say, heck with this, man. See you later, or you get into a situation where he's okay, not bad. Won a few games in there, looked pretty decent. And are you in the $5 or $6 million range? How much, how long is Mason going to want to lock himself up for as well too? So you got to think, you got to get inside Mason Rudolph's head inside all of this as well. Look, obviously the best case scenario is he doesn't play a single down, right? Or
Right.
at minimum comes in for a few kneel downs or wraps up a week 17 or 18 game, whatever game as far as that goes. But to kind of quantify what it might take to potentially re-sign Mason Rudolph, if you even want to re-sign Mason Rudolph, is damn near impossible as we sit here right now.
Yeah, it's really difficult to judge and evaluate. I will say this, though. I do still have a firm belief, even though Ben's coming back, the Steelers like Mason Rudolph more than practically any Steelers fan does. I think they're still high on him. I believe Charlie Batch even made a reference or allusion to that yesterday or today. So I think they still like Mason Rudolph, but to answer his future, it's really hard to know because you still have a whole season to go through. From my standpoint, I would probably just let him walk after 2021 and just go draft a quarterback this year or next, or find someone that I think gives myself a better chance to win.
Right. I mean, look. If you throw any kind of considerable amount of money at him, then he's got to be your starter.
Well, it depends on what. It just depends. I mean, I
mean, like if you're paying that guy $6, $7, $8 million a year, he's going to be your starter.
Yeah, there's some expensive backups though in football.
Yeah,
but the quarterback position is that
the Steelers are never that team though.
True.
And that's what I'm getting at. I mean, you're going to have to make a decision. You obviously you could get in a situation where nobody gets a chance to evaluate Mason in 2021 except the Steelers. Mason plays 40 total snaps, and then he's looking out there at the free agent market. He sees Ben probably exiting, and it says, man, my best shot maybe is just to try to compete for a job here. Sure, I'll sign that Landry Jones contract, for 2 years to at worst continue to be the backup there. And then obviously the Steelers go into the draft and do what they need to do there, right? But I mean, overall, just try. I guess the overall, and I've felt this way now for several weeks now. Especially the fact that Ben is indeed coming back or looks to be coming back in 2021. He's a sitting duck right now. So to try to speculate out that Mason Rudolph's going to be the future quarterback of this team past 2021, I mean, I don't see how anybody can do that right now,
right?
At all. And, unless he just plays lights out, it has to take over week 6 for whatever reason, just plays lights out. Steelers go to the playoffs and the Steelers go, hey, maybe we do have something here. But yeah, I think it's fair for the way you wrote what you wrote this morning, saying that, the Steelers probably like Mason Rudolph more than most everybody else does,
and that presents a dilemma for them, because assuming that Rudolph doesn't really play in 2021, what do you do with a guy that you like, but a guy that you haven't seen a whole lot of? I mean, that's your decision. Do you pay him? Do you let him walk? I mean, do you commit to him? Do you not? I mean, that's the dilemma they're going to be in a year from now.
Right, but once again, I mean, it should be you would think it would be a fairly easy decision for both sides to make. Next offseason.
Maybe, but again, if you like the guy but you don't really know totally what you have in him, then there's just a level of uncertainty there, a gray area there.
Well, and then put yourself in Mason's shoes.
Sure.
He probably right now, if I'm him, I'm counting down to 80 days until the 2022 free agents period starts.
In what sense? To get paid or to go somewhere else?
Just to look at more options.
Yeah, I think if Pittsburgh wants to bring him back and Ben retires, I think Rudolph will want to come back to Pittsburgh for the reasons you said. He knows the system, he knows the team, and he's probably will be his best chance to be the starter in Pittsburgh rather than anywhere else.
I think, and I'm going to go out on a limb here. All right, I think. The best guess here at this point is that Mason Rudolph probably won't get re-signed next offseason.
Okay, that's fair. I don't know where I would come in right now in terms of what I think will happen.
But once again, trying to predict this thing this far out with a full season. With look at the season. 2021 could go a lot of different ways. Not only for the Steelers, but for a guy like Mason Rudolph as well too. And look, obviously, if you draft a quarterback in this year, then that that really puts the damper on Mason Rudolph coming back as anything but a Landry Jones contract backup.
Sure. So stay tuned.
The draft will tell us obviously a little bit more when it comes to, and the team has made it obvious too that there's, and it's obvious anyway because they normally carry 4 during the offseason, but there's going to be another quarterback coming to Pittsburgh here in the next several weeks. The question is it going to be a draft pick? Is it going to be some cast-off veteran? Is it going to be an undrafted free agent? They're going to add a 4th quarterback.
Yeah, they will. Just the question of how they acquire him. And again, if you want to talk about them being aggressive and franchise quarterbacks, I think that really the only 2 names in play right now are Trey Lance and Mac Jones. I think the top 3 guys are going to be top 5 picks, well off the board. You're not going to be able to make a move up to go up and get them. And, obviously I think once you get past Mac Jones and Trey Lance, you get in the Kyle Trask, Jamie Newmans, Kellen Monds. Those guys aren't likely franchise heirs. And so the 2 I think you really have to circle are Mac Jones and Trey Lance and evaluate those 2 guys as closely as possible.
Is there any reason whatsoever to go get a 3rd, 4th, 5th round quarterback? Or is it all in on one of these first round guys and that's it? Or do you take because look, if you spend a 3rd, 4th round, even a 5th round pick right now, I would think on the quarterback position, you almost owe it to yourself. Obviously we'll see how the COVID rules work out with the practice squad and all like that. But odds are pretty good that quarterback's going to make your 53.
Yeah, my philosophy with the quarterback position, this is regardless of any situation, not even referencing the Steelers' particular outlook right now, is you go big or you go home on the quarterback position in the draft. Either you take one early or you don't take one at all, because the success rate, day 3, even day 2 quarterbacks and beyond is really low. Yes, there are some success stories, Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, etc., but the overall rate is incredibly low. And so either you go up and get your guy or you don't take one at all. So the Steelers may not share that philosophy. Obviously, they've drafted several mid-round quarterbacks throughout the years, whether we're talking Landry Jones, Omar Jacobs, Mason Rudolph, Josh Dobbs. But for me, for the Steelers standpoint, is you either take one in the first round or you don't waste the pick on one at all.
Do you think part of the conversations with Ben are as kind of what I've hoped they have been, meaning, Ben, look, okay, you can come back, but don't get your feelings hurt when we draft another quarterback here.
Yeah, I think you tell him that, but I don't think you have a long conversation about it. Hopefully Ben understands and just knows the situation he's in and how he doesn't have many years left. And obviously he's been around to see quarterbacks drafted before, and Rudolph in particular, most notably. So, he should just already have that understanding. So you probably tell Ben that, hey, we still may take a quarterback here because we have to find your replacement eventually. But I don't spend a lot of time breaking down my draft plans to Ben in that way.
No, I'm not saying you break down, but I don't care how you do it, how long the call. You can pass him a note for all I care.
Yeah, you could probably tell him, but he should already know that.
Do you like us? Do you like a circle? yes, no. Will you not get your feelings hurt? Yes or no?
Where's the box for check the salary cap? What is the cap number?
I think it's my whole preface is I think both sides should be open with that, because the last thing you want is to Ben to be Aaron Rodgered. Is that a word? Is that a verb?
It's a verb.
Why didn't that? I know that blew up pretty big when it happened there, but why didn't that blow up as big as maybe it did? Maybe just seeing this, mostly seeing the Steelers side of thing. But Aaron Rodgers certainly wasn't happy about that, was he?
Right. No, I know Packers fans were angry. They wanted to say to draft a receiver at all during that draft, and it worked out for them. They went to the NFC title game. I guess they lost, so I guess it didn't totally work out. But yeah, you want to do that courtesy to Ben. That's fine. But it's nothing more than just a quick note, and he should just know that information already. This team's going to have to find his replacement at some point.
Right. Okay.
All right. So anything else from the Ben front? Again, really, this last week felt like a much ado about nothing. There was a lot of sky is falling. Colbert doesn't like him. The Jared Goff comments and all that. But I think if you listen to what Colbert said without just reading the tweets of it, it was a different tone. Again, especially in that. Once I listened to that interview he did with Missy Matthews, I went, Ben's coming back. I mean, just listen to the way that the Colbert's talking about it. It was never an issue of, do we think Ben can play? Do we think Ben is the best on-field option? It was always an issue of just the salary cap, the uncertainty there in relation to Ben's contract. And that was going to be figured out. It was going to be solved at some point. And so, I think really the last week and the whole, speculation and media running wild was just kind of silly and filling up time, because it was a good story. The Steelers don't have a lot of drama these days with Ben or with Bell and AB gone. And so this Ben story was, some great made for TV drama.
Hey, did we benefit from all that nonsense? Absolutely, we did. But could we do without it? Yeah, I think my quote in the post there was hogwash, right?
Yeah, it's a very old timey phrase.
Right. Well, I could have used other ones, but more colorful ones. But I chose against that. I offend people pretty easily just stuttering the way I do when I don't use words. But moving forward, I just think what it's become now with the hot take. I mean, to me, the media gets less and less educated about these things, man, and it's so irritating, to read national stuff. Look, I more expect it from the mom and pop blogs and a little bit lower level, less, even on the local level, But I mean, at least the local level guys have a better sense than some of this national. A lot of what's happened in the last. In the last, 48 hours, just seems so contrived, man. I mean, it's not easy to figure out who I'm pointing fingers at, but I mean, it just seems so driven to get takes, to get retweets and things along those. I mean, you could smell it. It was so thick with the BS going on there, but. How many people you think got it right like we did?
I think a lot of Steelers fans still believe that Ben was going to come back. Maybe they weren't as sure as we were. But I think locally, a lot of fans and even local beat writers, didn't have the hysteria that some of the national media did. So I don't know. All I know is that I'd always kind of remain confident and steadfast that Ben was going to return, and that is a scenario of which played out.
All right, so everybody that needs to take a deep breath, continue airing those grievances, like we have said all along. At least I hope we put it out there that way. Alex, is we understood why people were against Ben coming back, right?
Yeah, I get the argument. It's that concern about being that good but not great team, being 10-6 and bouncing the first round. And what did you really get out of Ben coming back? That is a very real concern.
Or being 6-10, and on top of that, I understand the frustration with the people thinking, great, now we're not going to have the future quarterback in Pittsburgh come the start of the 2021 season. And they
see, I don't get that argument though, because you can still get your future quarterback regardless of Ben coming back.
No, I'm not telling you that's my argument. I'm telling you that's the argument out there. But I do understand why. I understand why people were. I understand it from the fact that people say, all right, they mean I'm going to protect that other side here, because I think what they mean is, look, we know the Steelers can't win a Super Bowl with Ben, so we're ready just to move on now with it, period. And we don't want the $10-14 million pushed over into dead money as a byproduct of something that we know isn't going to result in a Super Bowl championship.
Right. I get that. I don't get the argument, and I know you're not making this, just the argument at large of bringing Ben back somehow prevents you from drafting a quarterback of the future or finding a quarterback of the future. And the only way I think you can make that argument is by just saying the mindset of, if you have Ben there, you just feel more comfortable about your situation, so you're less likely to invest in the position than if you didn't have Ben. But from a reality standpoint, you could still trade up for a quarterback. You could still take a quarterback at 24. None of that changes regardless of whether or not Ben was coming back or not.
Well, look, here's what the narrative is going to be if you come out of the first round or two of the draft or whatever without a drafted quarterback. The narrative is going to be, well, they never intended to because Ben interrupted these plans, because they decided to be. It's not going to. We're going to be the only ones that one of the few ones that say, well, maybe they looked at the quarterback and they just couldn't get one that they liked.
That's true.
There is that middle ground there that not a lot of people are going to be able to accept, and that middle ground being, we were open to taking a quarterback in the first round. We just we couldn't get one that we liked, either to fall to us or trade up for one. That's going to be the tiny part that not a lot of people will be able to accept. It's either going to be, well, thank God at least they drafted a quarterback, or it's going to be, see, I told you, they re-signed Ben and they had no intentions of getting a quarterback. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do, and it's just tough because we will never know how serious they were at getting a quarterback if they don't come away with one in the first round. We don't know if they really looked at it or if they didn't. We just won't be privy to that information, and we can only take them at their word, so much. So that's where it's difficult. But there's still nothing that should prevent this team from going after a quarterback if they really want to, just because Ben is back.
Right, and I think that's been the bulk of kind of our talk here in the last hour.
Right. Yeah, I'm reiterating that point. So we'll see. But as we know right now, Ben will be, assuming they can work things out contractually, which they should. He'll be back. And when do you think the deal will be done? In a week or so? I mean,
I don't think it's going to take too long. Look, you got to start getting your ducks. It's 2 weeks from today, right? I mean, 3 weeks from today, right?
Yeah, I think about 3 weeks.
All right, so and obviously the tampering period starts a couple of days prior to that, and I mean you got to start getting a lot of the ducks in a row. So even though the date is technically 3 weeks away from now, you got to start getting some of these T's crossed and I's dotted at this point. So I would suspect possibly by, I mean, it depends on how long once the ink dries to how long it leaks out, right? Or hits the NFLPA website. But I would think within 7 to 10 days, we should know something as far as the actual minutia that goes on that it went on in here. And I know people. I think Florio threw out there, well, what if they do something not likely to be earned with Ben to help I suppose that's a possibility. It's just things like that the Steelers just don't do. Now, obviously they don't do voidable years either. We'll see, we'll see what the exact language is in all like that. But overall, and it's been my thought all along here, is that you're just going to have a large, you're going to have a large chunk of that $19 million turned into a signing bonus and spread out over 2, 3, 4, additional years of the contract. And then, the only other interesting aspect is how is 2022 set up in Ben's contract? Whether it's void, if it's voidable, who's able to void it? Is there a wink? Is there kind of understanding that he'll take the Breeze route? That's some of the mystery kind of still involved in this. I think really the only mystery now.
What are some good, not likely to be earned incentives for Ben's contract? Quarterback sneaks one.
Obviously, look, make it to the AFC Championship game. Anything that he did not do last year is not like, you could put it interception number. You could put it, I don't think you want to put it something where you might encourage him to drop back 40 times a game. But look, a lot of, another thing that goes in this too as well too, and hopefully they've had a little bit of the conversations to this point is, Ben, we don't need you throwing forward. Hopefully we don't get it. It is our job. Kevin Colbert's job at this point is to do whatever he needs to do to, provide a running game, and Matt Canada, some sort of offensive scheme that hopefully does not require Ben Roethlisberger to drop back week in, week out, 40 times a game. to throw the football. Just plain and simple.
Yeah, 100%. That's going to be their mentality. We can't sustain that level of offense. It didn't work for us in the long run last year. We have to give a better rushing attack for Ben, better balance, and that's why I tweeted out some thoughts yesterday that I think they like their tackle situation more than I like their tackle situation, and so I really think the first two picks they go with, in whatever order it presents itself based on who's on the board, is going to be center and running back. The center to replace Pouncey, and the running back to try to jumpstart the worst rushing attack in football next season. So I think tackle is going to be the position they aren't as likely to take early as I would like them to. I think the focus will be on center and running back early in the draft.
And we'll see if we'll put our tinfoil hats on a little bit later to see Kevin Colbert talking about it's a deep tackle class, you know. We'll be able to circle back and say, well, that was all, you know, kind of card playing there, and then they end up taking one early, or they, you know, take one third, fourth round along those lines there. But I would agree with you that I think that I would think that they think that they have at least enough to get by with. And we'll see what happens with, say, the Kelvin Beachums of the world or whoever else. You know, maybe Filer, maybe they find a way. Maybe Filer's market value comes down low enough, you know, where they can add him back in the fold. They're just not as hard pressed to go out and draft a tackle in the first round as probably most people think. However, it still is not 100% out of the question that they couldn't draft a tackle in the first round, right?
No, it's possible. I just think it's a lot less likely than where I started the draft process at.
They're going to end up drafting a running back just to make me mad. That's what it's going to end up being. Najee Harris, isn't it?
But you like Najee Harris.
I do.
If they're going to draft a running back, at least draft a running back you like.
Right. It's just the whole, you know, the whole.
I know.
My whole issue with it, you know. And once again, I hopefully people understand that's my thoughts and what I think versus what I think the team will do are two different things, you know. And
right. What about center in round 1, running back in round 2? Would you be okay with that?
I could see it happening that way. Yeah, I could. Who do you have as the top rated center right now? It's
probably your T-Rex buddy, Creed Humphrey from Oklahoma.
Yeah,
but I also really like Landon Dickerson. He would be a first round pick if it wasn't for the medical issues.
And look, whatever happens, they're not going to go into at least we don't think. At least I don't think, and I think you feel that we've already had this conversation. Is somebody other than J.C. Hassenauer that can snap the football is going to be on this roster come draft day?
Yes,
and probably somebody that's done it in a game more than 4 or 5 games. Along those lines. And, whether it be B.J. Finney, whether it be, look, there might be another center or two. Didn't the Saints center just hit the wire not too long ago?
Nick Easton.
Right. I think that could be a potential for, obviously, they're not going to throw tons of money at the position, but they're going to get somebody else in there should they not be able to get a center of their liking at some point in the draft, and they're probably going to do the same at a backup tackle position as well too, especially if we all expect Alejandro Villanueva to be elsewhere in a couple more weeks there as well too. So I definitely understand why your thought process is at this point more likely that first round draft pick will be a center or a running back. I concur.
If they want Najee Harris, the report is the Dolphins have mutual interest with Packers running back Aaron Jones. So the Steelers should be rooting really hard for Aaron Jones to sign with Miami because the Dolphins could be that team at 18 that takes Najee Harris ahead of the Steelers.
Who's the last true tackle the Steelers drafted in the first round?
First true tackle. True tackle, the way you phrase that is interesting. Let me think here. Marvel Smith, was he a first-round pick?
You would have to go back to, let's see.
Or Jermaine Stevens, I don't know, in like 92?
Let me see here.
Gilbert was a second-round pick. Was Marvel Smith a first-round? Was he a first-round pick?
Simmons was a guard.
Right, he was first-rounder.
Marvel Smith was second round in 2000, so it's never happened during the Kevin Colbert era, right?
Yeah, it's 2000 if you're looking it up right now. So are we talking Jermaine Stevens?
we would be talking Jermaine Stevens out of North Carolina A&T in 1996. How old were you in 1996, Alex?
I was 3 years old.
All right.
Thank God I didn't have to watch him fail his conditioning run and get chewed up by Cowher and cut.
Yeah,
right after.
that didn't work out too well, did it?
It did not.
Then I think don't you have to go back to, I think, Leon Searcy 1992 before that, right?
Was it? I was either it was 92 in there, so Searcy in 92. Okay, so it hasn't happened in the Colbert era. Obviously, doesn't mean they couldn't. It would prevent Colbert from doing that this time, but I think it will not happen for other non-history related reasons.
Sure, we could go the Artie Burns argument, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all right. Doesn't happen until it does.
What are the old Bill Parcells rules of drafting? And I think more specifically, if you draft early in a draft, the old Bill Parcells rules were either you get a quarterback, you get a player to protect the quarterback, or you get a guy that can get after the quarterback,
mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
Might not be either one of those three for the Steelers at 24 overall.
Don't think it will be. All right, Dave, you had a contract projection for Steven Nelson, a potential extension there that would help for multiple reasons to lock up a good player longer term. Give me some sort of cap relief. Do you want to walk through that projected extension for Steven Nelson?
Before we move there, to do it right in the middle of the show here, good, bad, indifferent. In fact, I'd like to hear most of the bad. Email us if you listen to the show and tell us the worst either opinion or take or projection or whatnot that Alex and I have had concerning how things might play out with Ben Roethlisberger throughout this thing. What is the thing that has driven you the craziest, made you the maddest, made you stop listening, which you're still listening, so send that to us. Let's get some more hate mail going, Alex. Send that to the terrible podcast at gmail.com. And if you want to throw in some attaboys or whatnot, we'll read a few of those as well too. So with the Steven Nelson thing, boy, did you see Greg Rosenthal had the three players? I think that, what did he say? Surprise cuts are most likely to be cut. How did he frame that article?
Yeah, I don't pay attention to a lot of that offseason fodder. I think it was potential cuts, I think was the phrasing.
All right. On that list, I think he had, who did he have? Ben Roethlisberger, strike one.
Mm-hmm.
David Castro was another one. I think Steven Nelson was the other one, right?
Correct.
All right. Where are you right now? You're a big Steven Nelson fan. Well, I shouldn't say big, but you're a Steven Nelson fan, are you not?
I like him. I think you can already call that strike two on Rosenthal because Nelson is not getting cut. If there was a Steelers cornerback who would get cut, it'd be Joe Hayden. It would not be Steven Nelson.
Correct. Tell me what you like about set this up for us. Tell us why the Steelers should consider, if at all possible, for the obvious reasons, cap space, which I'll cover that in a little bit. But give me a reason why at 28, he's 28, I think, right? Just turned 28, I think, in January. Why the Steelers should consider extending Steven Nelson this offseason.
Putting cap aside, because you never extend the player you don't want to extend just for the cap reasons. That's bad business. But what's impressed me most about Steven Nelson in his 2 years in Pittsburgh is how consistent he's been. Yes, there's been some occasional bad moments. Stephon Diggs toasted him pretty good against the Bills. That's going to happen. Life of an NFL cornerback, especially the pass rush, that game sucked too. Anyway, his final year at KC, it was a good year, but it was very feast or famine. He had a couple interceptions, some big plays, but he got burned a lot, and he was targeted a whole ton. And
highest targeted cornerback in the league, I think, that season, right?
Right, I believe so. Yeah, and so it was when they signed Nelson, I described him as a feast or famine kind of a guy, and that hasn't been the case in Pittsburgh. It's been very consistent, still with some very positive plays overall, but he's been a very consistent week in, week out, drive in, drive out kind of a guy. I think his ball skills are good. He's in position. He's a smart guy. He tackles well. He's tough. He's physical. He plays to run hard. I think him and Joe Hayden are some of the best run-stopping outside cornerback duos in football. And overall, he's just been a very consistent, mentally tough cornerback. And I think he's been impressive overall.
I would agree. Boy, I remember writing up the scouting report on him on Depot.
Did you like him?
I loved him. I thought he's great. I thought he looked every bit. Go back and find that in some of the tweets I had. I thought he's very, very Steelers-like. way back then, and was obviously a little bit. I think I put him in a mock draft or two of mine back.
Well,
back,
they brought him in for a visit, so it makes
right.
sense to do that. Yeah.
As well too. But fast forward to where we are now. He's about to enter the final year of his contract. Joe Hayden's in the final year of his. So unless you want two brand new cornerbacks, starting cornerbacks in 2020. Look, the odds of Hayden playing past this year are extremely slim, right?
Yeah, I don't see it happening.
All right, so if you're going to extend a cornerback this offseason, it's probably going to be Steven Nelson, correct?
Correct.
All right, now we get into market value. What is Steven Nelson worth market value wise? Now, Jonathan Jones, a guy that you and I've had a long relationship on Twitter, I think, with Jonathan Jones over the years, dating back to when he covered the Panthers. He wrote an article, and look, this is nothing new. We've talked a little bit off and on, about Steven Nelson potentially being an extension candidate this offseason. We just haven't gone way deep down into that rabbit hole and all. Well, Jonathan Jones wrote a little bit about the possibility of maybe Steven Nelson getting extended on CBS Sports .com yesterday. I kind of took the ball and ran from there. The meatiest part of what Jonathan Jones really wrote in his article was a new extension that would put Nelson into the top 10 highest paid cornerbacks by average annual salary. Trey Waynes got a 3-year, $42 million deal from the Bengals last year, which may seem counterintuitive for a team faced with figuring out who will be their quarterback and how they'll replace the 9-time Pro Bowler who snapped the ball there. I thought he worded that very, very well. Now, being as he did throw Trey Waynes out there, I thought that would be a great starting point to start discussing comparatively Steven Nelson's market value. Trey Waynes' current contract has a new money average of $14 million per season, and that currently ranks him tied for 9th overall league-wide when it comes to cornerbacks according to Over the Cap. To me, and this is your opportunity to chime in here now, hands on the buzzer, please. $14 million per season for Nelson seems a bit rich for the Steelers.
It does, but if you're the Steelers, how do you argue paying him less than Trey Waynes? Because A, I think Nelson's a better player than Trey Waynes, and B, usually these guys want to jump the last guy who got paid. So what is the great argument against that?
Steven Nelson's overall play and who he is, and I I'm not disrespecting him here. When I think of top 10 cornerbacks in the NFL, Steven Nelson doesn't rush to my mind.
Yeah, but neither does Trey Waynes, I'm guessing either.
Oh yeah, you're right on. But that's
right.
Not my problem, right?
Well, the Steelers have to deal with that problem because that's the reality, is that these cornerbacks get paid because that contract he signs now, 2 years from now, he's not going to be in the top 10. He's going to be 15 or 17 or something like that when other cornerbacks get paid. So that's just a leapfrog game that gets played. Now you could argue that Waynes got paid more because he was an open market free agent, and that drove his price up, and that's valid. It's probably the best argument against that. But I think maybe in principle he's not worth top 10 money, but the way these things work, maybe you end up still getting paid top 10 money.
I think you hit on a good point there that he's only got one option here this year, and that's the Steelers and nobody else. So that's
no one's forcing Nelson to sign this deal either. He could just sit there and wait for a year.
Absolutely, and really, he probably has a little slightly higher bargaining aspect of this because the Steelers probably would not only like to get him locked up for a couple more years, but in the process, they'd probably like a little cap relief on top of there.
That's true.
Look, Nelson is right now, his new money average currently sits at $8.5 million, which is, you look back now, that Steelers got it for a hell of a price, did they not?
Yeah, great deal, great contract.
And $8.5 million, when you look at a guy like Trey Waynes, that's $14 million. That's quite a difference right now. Now, does Steven Nelson deserve a raise?
Yes, his play has warranted it. I'll put it that way.
Absolutely. Now, also, you got to look. This is where it comes in, is studying the Steelers and how they do business in the cap over the years too. They also got this guy on the other side of Steven Nelson named Joe Hayden, and he makes $11 million a season. He's a Pro Bowler. He's got quite a resume, does he not?
He does.
Okay. His current new money average is $11 million a year. Now, like it or not, Steelers are very careful with the hierarchy and all like that. All right. In other words, I think, and look, what is the jump from $8.5 million to $11 million?
$2.5 million.
You are correct, sir. Right?
What do I win?
No. Yeah,
11.
Two and a half million. Take my shoes off here.
You are not going to be the next Jeopardy.
$2.5 million there, Alex. What is $2.5 million, Alex? $2.5 million jump is not bad at all. And right now, Joe Hayden is tied he is 15th overall league wide when it comes to cornerback contracts. Okay.
He's 15th.
15th overall. Right. Okay. League wide. I think personally, and doing this as long as I've done, I think the fair market value when it comes to an extension with Steven Nelson is right at the $11 million. I think you keep the hierarchy happy. Nelson gets a nice raise there on top of it. Now, going into more specifics there on top of it, Steven Nelson is scheduled to earn, as far as actual money in 2021, $8.25 million. Okay? You've obviously got to put more money in his pocket in 2021 to entice him to sign a deal. In other words, should things go south on him in 2021 for whatever reason, at least he has put this amount of money in his bank account versus this amount of money in his bank account. Funny we're comparing to Joe Hayden here, because Joe Hayden's obviously his last deal was a 2-year, $22 million extension. Okay. In other words, that's $11 million new money average that we just talked about there. I think that sets up as a perfect template for Steven Nelson. Now, going back to the Joe Hayden, when he signed his deal, he had old money of $10 million on the books at the time that had to be accounted for on top of that $22 million. That old money just doesn't go away, right?
Right.
Because the player was already due that. So what they did is they signed Joe Hayden to a 2-year, $22 million extension. They rolled in that $10 million that he was due in, when was it, 2019. It set up for a 3-year, $32 million deal. I think you can sign, I believe that you have a good chance of getting Steven Nelson to bite on a 2-year, $22 million extension, maybe longer if he wants to. I personally, if I was his agent, I would say let's do the 2 years, $22 million. Let's not lock yourself up here, because maybe you can get one more bite of the apple at 30 years old. I'm not ruling out the possibility of it being longer. I just think the 2-year model that gets them to the other side of 30 is perfect. I think that's what the Steelers would like to try to do as well too. You could do a 2-year, $22 million extension with Steven Nelson. Obviously, you throw in the other 8. What would it be? The other 8? What did I say? $8.25 million that he's owed there, and you could get this thing to 30. What is it? $30.25 million total value over the 3 years. As part of that deal, you give Nelson a signing bonus right around $13.5 million. So he puts that in his pocket, and then you give him a base salary in 2021 of what would be the minimum for him, which is $990,000. So Nelson would based on this extension that I laid out, 2-year, $22 million extension, Steven Nelson would put in his pocket $14.52 million in 2021 versus the $8.25 million that he's scheduled to earn. That's pretty significant, right? I mean, You really are enticing him to sign that deal because you're adding a little over $6.25 million in money that he wasn't going to get this year. So that's his incentive to sign there. Now,
right.
Obviously the cash flow. What you also do is you put a $3 million roster bonus in there for 2022. That's due to him in March. So basically in a year's time, a little longer than a year's time, or right at a year's time, depending on if they're able to get this done fairly quickly. He in a full 12-month calendar year, what's 14.52 plus $3 million, $17.52 million before he even plays a down in the 2022 season, right? Mm-hmm. And then also that gives the Steelers a jumping off point should they need to, which we obviously hope and wouldn't think would happen there. All of this put together, when the ink dries on Dave's contract projection there, the Steelers would save $2.75 million in 2021 cap space there. Now, people say, man, that's not enough cap space savings there. Well, once again, you could have kind of the same parameters in here, just do it a 4-year extension instead of a 2-year extension. Obviously, that gives you more years to prorate that $13.5 million-ish signing bonus. You could probably save upwards around $4.5 million in 2021 cap space if Nelson was willing to sign a 4-year extension as opposed to a 2-year extension there. So that's all semantics there. It's all what the player would and his agent are willing to agree to. But I strongly feel that 2 years, $22 million, $11 million new money average, which would equal him with Joe Hayden, I think is the right market value for him, and I think it's something that Steven Nelson would really consider.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I think you laid it out extremely well, and you were right about this stuff more often than not, much more than I am. But I still think he would want more money than that. I think he's a very confident guy, a guy that's very sure in his abilities, and I mean that in a good way. And I think he would want closer to that top 10 money because if he took that deal, where would he rank in terms of top corners in football?
He'd be tied with Hayden at 15th.
And where's he at right now?
Way on down there, right?
Is it okay?
20. Where is he right now? I'll have to pull up.
Right. Well,
I don't think I put that in the rankings there.
Okay. I think he just want to be a little bit higher than that. I don't think he wants to be tied with Hayden because Hayden got his deal when?
2019.
Right. You want to be tied with a dude who got paid in 2019 and 2021. Generally not how that works league-wide.
Yeah. Who's been the better they're comparative cornerbacks right now at both of their stages of their careers, though, right?
They are, but I think Nelson's the better corner, and he has more value in obviously the longer term than Joe Hayden.
See, I said Hayden was 15th, so 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Nelson's 21.
21.
Tied with Cliff Harris Jr. of the Chargers, who's 32 years old.
With who?
Cliff Harris Jr.
Why do I not know that name?
Chris Harris.
Oh, Chris Harris. Cliff Harris. I like the Cowboys dude come back.
Yeah,
Lambert.
I'm thinking two different Harrises here.
Yeah, I just think he would want a little bit more than that. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, and I think that's a fair way you put it out, and I think you've made it very clear the incentive for Nelson to do that deal now. But my gut says he would want more money than that. Because if he played out this year and hit the market next year, he's getting paid more than that, right?
Possibly, obviously, depending on the season that he has.
Well, sure. If he has another reasonably solid season, he's gonna be paid more than that.
Right, but he's got to get himself to that point.
Sure. Right.
And once again, you have the captured audience versus the open market audience right now as well too. Mm-hmm. I will put it. Look, I'm not ruling out. I'm not going to completely rule out an extent. Look at it this way too. If you did give him you would have to demand that the $14 million new money average be part of a 4-year extension first.
Okay.
I mean, you'd almost have to because there's no way you're going to lower that cap number.
Right. That's fair. Yep.
All right. On top of it, even at that money, you'd have to put you would have to put, if you're going to pay him a new money average of $14 million, then what kind of money are you going to put in his pocket for 2021? It's obviously going to be more than the new money average, right? I just wrote up talking about how you're going to give him a new money average of $11 million. He's due the 8.25. You're going to have to put in, just to get him at $11 million new money average, you got to give him whatever the number I said, 14. You got to put about over $14 million in his pocket. So if you give him a new money average of 14 million, you're probably going to have to put 18 to $19 million in his pocket in 2021. At least $18 million. So, how much of that's going to be, base salary? How much of that's going to be signing bonus? Let's say you gave him, because a lot of people don't realize, and this is one mistake that Jonathan Jones made in his article. He says, man, the Steelers can save upwards to $8 million in cap space by signing Nelson to an extension this offseason. Wrong. That couldn't be more wrong, because Nelson has 6.170 in 2021, almost $6.2 million in prorated money in 2021 alone. So if you add in a $990,000 minimum base salary that he can earn, you already have him at $7 million as a minimal cap cost, and you haven't even given him a new signing bonus, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, and his cap hit this year is, what did I say, 14 something million? You're not going to, there's no way to save $8 million in cap space with Steven Nelson, period. No matter, even if he took no signing bonus, you couldn't get to that spot there. So by giving, I guess what I'm circling back here is if you gave Steven Nelson a $14 million new money average extension, it would have to be a 4-year extension. I think when the ink dried even after that, you're still looking only at around probably a $3 million cap savings in 2021 versus the $2.75 million that I laid out.
Mm-hmm. No, I understand that, but I think Nelson is different because you're doing that a little bit for cap reasons, but mostly because you just want to lock up a good player longer term, and so that's the driving factor. So I will take losing out on some cap savings here to lock up a good player long term.
Okay, I mean, I'll put it to you this way: I don't want to rule. I don't want to paint myself into a corner here, but I see where you're coming from on the 14 million. I see where Jonathan Jones is coming. I just feel, and I bet I'm willing to bet a lot of listeners agree with me, that I think $14 million new money average for Steven Nelson's a bit rich. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'll leave it at this. I will be fairly stunned if $14 million new money average is what Steven Nelson is able to get out of the Steelers.
Okay, that's fair. And it may not be 14, it may be 13, 14, somewhere in there. I don't want to split hairs too much. Now, let's put it this way. What are the chances an extension actually happens with Steven Nelson, and when could that take place, regardless of what the dollar is?
Those are two great questions, Bob.
You would imagine they would like it to get done. I think you wrote this in the article before March 17th in an effort to reduce some cap space, but they generally wait in the offseason to do some of these deals. So you have two competing factors working against each other.
Typically, history tells you that they would like to wait until closer to the start of the regular season, use that extra whatever cap space they can get out of it to help go towards in-season costs, yada yada. Because they're gonna need more cap space after March 17th, something we've talked about every year. We'll see how badly. I guess what I'm getting at is I don't think you can completely rule out the possibility of it happening within the next 3 weeks. If they do it within the next 3 weeks, it's because they really look. You could pay for Cam Sutton probably first year cap hit with that.
Yeah, you could.
I mean, pretty damn. If the number's like 2.7, anywhere from 2.75 million versus to, let's say, 4.25 million in cap savings, depending on length and structure. If that's the cap savings you get by Nelson, that would pay for a first year cap hit for Cameron Sutton, or should, you know. So we'll see if they do it before March 17th, it's because they really want to use that money to re-sign one of their own unrestricted free agents. I would obviously put the odd, it would be in my favor to put the odds low on it happening in the next 3 weeks, but I don't think you can entirely rule it out. Now, on top of that, though, other than guys like Jonathan Jones speculating that Steven Nelson could sign an extension this offseason, and other than me and you speculating for several months that could be a possibility, there's really been no tangible reports, evidence, or that it's in the works.
Right, and Nelson, I think, referenced that in an interview he did yesterday that said, kind of joked that, hey guys, I'm in the last year of my contract. I'm just throwing that out there, just letting you know. So, but these things can happen quickly. So let me ask it this way: by September 1st, does Steven Nelson have a contract extension? I
would say true, Alex.
Okay, I would say true as well.
And obviously I like the. I think I really like the odds of it happening. I would just place the odds of it happening probably after March 17th as opposed to before then. But obviously the Steelers cap situation and whatever their plans are with their own unrestricted free agents could play a role in that. And look, I mean, $2.75 million doesn't seem like all that amount of cap space saved, but that once again we just brought up the talk about Cameron Sutton and that paying for a guy like him. So I think it will happen. I think it will happen. Make sure we save this portion of the audio just in case I need it. But I think it'll happen right along the lines that I laid out in new money average, whether it be 2, 3, 4 year extension.
Could the number the salary cap comes in at drive this 182 versus 185? And if it's 182 and they were hoping for 185, that makes up the difference by doing an extension with Nelson, or is that too maddening to look at it that way?
Yeah, I think it's too that's quite a verb, adjective. I think, look, either you can get it done with him or not, because it's not like the excess cap space will go stale. Right. Leave it in the pantry like I did my beef jerky while I was away. Did you know beef jerky? I mean, even if you don't really seal it really, really good, beef jerky can get moldy, evidently.
Really?
Yeah, I went downstairs.
Are you're a beef jerky guy?
I am when I can have it, and I'm not. But I had a hankering for it last night and went down. It's like, damn, I won't be eating beef jerky tonight.
What brand is it? Jack's?
Yeah, it's Jack's, and ideally I like that the heavy black pepper one that they have, but it's so damn hard to find that I end up getting that the hot and spicy one there. But and we buy the big the 20 ounce one, whatever you get at Sam's, is what she. I don't eat a ton of it, but it's nice to have a little bit of protein, mixed in and all like that. And I like some spicy stuff, and right now I'm not supposed to have it. I went downstairs last night. It's like, oh man. I had to throw it out.
The sound of taps are being played.
Not that. My life, look, my life's not that disappointing.
All right, Dave. So good info on Steven Nelson. We'll see what happens. I think we're at least both in agreement that he deserves an extension, and we think it will happen at some point before the start of the 2021 season.
And similarly, we'll see how quickly I can get to it. I hope to do something along the lines with David DeCastro. I've been kind of holding off, kind of waiting to see maybe if DeCastro might be a surprise, retirement or for whatever reason or whatnot. But David DeCastro is another guy that conceivably could get extended this offseason and save a little bit of cap money in the process there. But I think there's at least $2.75 million out there to save with Steven Nelson, and maybe even as high as like $4.5 million in cap space, depending on length of extension and obviously new money average and how much money is given to him in 2021.
Gotcha. All right, Dave, anything else you want to talk about in today's show, or do you want to get to some reader emails and close out today's show?
Yeah, I think we'll start closing it out here.
All right, good deal. What do we got in the email machine?
All right, let's see what the email machine has to say. Well, we got a bunch of them in here. We'll see how many we can get to. Steelerhawk 47. Let me preface with the fact that I'm a total Buckeye homer. Love when a Buckeye ends up in the Berg. What would you think about 6'4", 315 guard Wyatt Davis as a first or second round choice? He's a nasty mauler up front. Right guard is his natural position, but Dotson seems fine at left guard last year. Davis is very athletic as well, definitely fast enough to be an effective pulling guard. Every scouting report I've seen also mentions his length. No T-Rex here. What about 6th or 7th round pick on 6'6", 250 pound tight end Luke Farrell? I think Farrell's one I got circled to kind of take a look at. Where's Luke? Where was Farrell out of?
Ohio State.
Right. Didn't we have a profile on him just recently?
Yep, just Tom the other day. Yep.
Yeah. He's a solid blocker in both the run game and pass pro. Very good at sealing the edge in the running game. He's not a burner, but has solid hands. He's good at using the basketball background for boxing out. OSU underutilizes tight ends in the passing game. Boy, you got that right. They sure do. And I think he does have upside as a receiver. I look at him as fairly high floor, moderate ceiling kind of tight end. He played tight end and defensive end in high school as well. Wyatt Davis, I've seen very, very little of. I think of the guys you listed there. I think Farrell probably has the better chance of being a Steeler later in the draft than Wyatt Davis does being a guard drafted early in the draft.
I would agree. I haven't studied Davis much either, and it just, obviously when you draft these linemen, typically they're going to play out of the gate. Marquise Pouncey did, Castro was supposed to until that knee injury his rookie season, and I don't see a home. This Austin's going to be at left guard, Castro's at right guard. So, obviously Davis could just sit for one season and replace Castro in 2022. That's certainly possible and plausible, but I think the focus is going to be on center at the top of the class, top of the draft when it comes to addressing the offensive line.
I don't know. Did Wyatt Davis play any center at Ohio State? I don't think he did. Did he?
I do not know for sure. My guess is no, though.
I'm trying to look. I don't remember reading anything on him on that. Too bad he didn't. Couldn't. But I don't think we have a scouting report on Wyatt Davis yet, do we?
No, not yet.
But we probably will at some point. So Steelerhawk 47, keep checking the site. Make sure you check out what we have on Luke Farrell already, and go ahead and look forward for the other one as well too there. Jim Bendis writes in, Tomlin, OC, etc. Happy. Hey guys, happy you got away. Okay, got away. My family was in Canton years ago, and I agree that going through the Hall of players bus was the best part of the trip. Question 1, with Tomlin having COVID, how will that affect the draft scouting process with Tomlin not fully engaged? Question to answer that, I would hope, and it sounds like Tomlin's on the back end of this, so I would think that and I would hope that he'd be able to hit the scouting road along with Colbert when the need presents itself.
Yeah, really the pro days don't kick up until I believe March 11th, so that should give Tomlin enough time. Obviously, we don't want to say anything in absolutes and certainties, but I expect his schedule won't be that interrupted.
Question number 2, if Colbert picks up a veteran OC not named B.J. Finney, who are the possible center candidates available, either free agency and or via a trade? That's something that I think we're probably going to put Alex on here pretty soon, right?
Yeah, I do a wish list. I'll do a wish list at some point. I've just casually scanned through some of the names. Ted Karras, I think Corey Linsley's name's been thrown out there. Obviously, we talked about B.J. Finney, but aside from him, I haven't studied the list too closely yet. So I haven't gotten to that point, but you can pull up a list, and there are some options out there.
And Jim, I think that list might grow by a couple of names in the next couple of weeks as well too. That's kind of why we kind of wait a little bit closer to the start of free agency here, and I think even Colbert's probably maybe kind of reading the tea leaves, kind of maybe thinking maybe one or two might come available there, saying that several players are going to get cut here pretty soon as well too. The Saints center Easton that we talked about, not an awful option, right? Especially if you got him for cheap.
Right, and the Texans yesterday just released, and I always struggle with the pronunciation of his name, Senio Kelemete.
Right, he's more of a guard, though, right?
Yeah, but I think he has played a little bit of center, too. I'm just kind of done some research on that. He's definitely more of a guard, but he has played center. So probably not an ideal fit, but those are the kind of names who could pop up, as teams get cap compliant for the 17th.
Follow-up comment, if you like the Pro Football Hall of Fame, you would love the Baseball Hall of Fame, at least in my opinion. It outdid the Football Hall of Fame. Boy, if it outdid you can lock me in Canton, come get me about a month later, I think there. I'll keep that in mind. He says, at least when I was there circa 2013, the highlight for me, they had a replica of the locker room, and they invited you to put on the team classic uniforms. For me, they had an old 1960 Roberto Clemente tank top uniform. Boy, I bet that was cool. I just happened to have a black shirt on, felt like the Pirate player ready to play a game for a brief moment. Only issue it's in the middle of nowhere, hard to get to. But have you been there, Alex? Have you been to the Baseball Hall of Fame?
No, I've never been to Cooperstown, but I had a buddy that's been there several times, and he did say it's in the middle of nowhere. And Canton basically is the same. Something about Hall of Fames and just putting them in just obviously I know why it's in Canton because that's where the NFL started, but it just the middle of nowhere in Canton, Ohio. It's an interesting choice, right off the highway. Very, very curious.
Thoughts on Ben from Sim Football Critic. Fellas, always a pleasure to hear from my favorite Steelers resource. Yes, I said resource, not blog site. Call us whatever you want. We've been called worst. In regards to Big Ben, I will always have a place in my heart for him because he allowed me to see and enjoy 2 Super Bowl wins with my own eyes. I didn't have the pleasure to see the teams in the 70s. With that said, what is the real chance that the Steelers win the Super Bowl this year with Ben at the helm? Is bringing him back more about allowing your Hall of Fame quarterback to retire on his terms, saving on dead money, or both? As a fan base, we want another Super Bowl victory. Just not sure that's happening in 2021, regardless of who is playing quarterback, especially with all the potential starters that may be lost in free agency. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you. I think Alex and I, hopefully we've made it pretty clear that I'll put it this way, their chance, I think they've got a decent chance at competing for the AFC North title. Where it goes from there, not very optimistic about, period.
Yeah, I don't think those chances are very high. I don't think they're not top 5. They're probably not even in the top 10 list of teams most likely to win the Super Bowl. Maybe they're squeaking in that 8 to 10 range. I don't have a ranking right now. But yeah, I mean, I wrote the article before the start of last year. I've said it many times that this was the last, the best chance to do it. And now the reality is that chance is come and gone.
Him saying is bringing him back more about allowing your Hall of Fame quarterback to retire on his terms, saving on dead money, or both. Look, I can't stress this enough. My thoughts on this are that the organization feels like whatever, they feel deep down inside that they have a chance at winning the Super Bowl, a better chance of winning the Super Bowl in 2021 with Ben as opposed to not with Ben. So that if they did it any other reason than that, then shame on them. Now, whether or not, obviously you a lot of people are disagreeing, and Alex and I, don't like the chances of them winning, but their own reasoning for bringing Ben back in 2021 is because they think he gives them a chance to legitimately win the Super Bowl.
Right. Yeah. And that's seemed to be backed up by Art Rooney's statement today.
Pastor Joe Green, David Alex, things are getting more interesting by the day. I enjoyed the show on Monday about after the hiatus. However, something mentioned really piqued my interest. One or both of you mentioned that Coach Tomlin inferred that Zach Banner was Tomlin's guy at left tackle. Now I believe I remember the quote ascribed to Coach T, but did not understand it as referring to left tackle. I assume it was a comment about right tackle at best. What is your opinion on Banner being left tackle? While I really dig him, I never considered him a genuine option at left tackle.
Yeah, it's not where my head has been at. Now, I understand the lines between left tackle and right tackle have blurred over the years, and the differences from an on-field standpoint don't mean as much, but that probably wouldn't be my plan. And then I made the point also that, assuming Banner comes back, it's probably going to be on a 1-year deal. And so you'll have, let's say a core 4 is your right tackle next year, Banner at left tackle, both your tackles are on the last year of the contracts. The core 4 last year was a rookie deal, Banner on a 1-year contract. And so there's uncertainty, I think, with the long term of the position as well. So I'd still be all for drafting a tackle, investing in a longer term option in the first round, but I'm getting the sense that won't be the direction the team goes.
What side is he going to end up on? And as far as evaluating right now, we just other than his limited pro tape before he got to the Steelers, and then his USC tape, which is totally a different body type player. Mm-hmm. We really don't have a lot to go on with his tape other really than the Giants game, and he played well, I thought, overall. But I mean, that's not a lot of snaps there. I mean, it could go either way as far as size. They could flip a core 4 over to left tackle and then put Banner right, or they could do just the opposite. I mean, theoretically, I guess it could go either way.
Yeah, I mean, you could. I mean, a core 4 played left tackle in college, so he could stay there. But to the point is, it doesn't sound like they're going to make a serious investment at offensive tackle, and I would probably disagree with that philosophy.
Who do you predict on what side as we sit this far out?
I don't
go
really
either
know.
way, couldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you said you could flip a coin. I mean, just based off of what Tomlin said, then Banner at left tackle, the core 4 at right tackle, because that seems to be what Tomlin's plan is.
Austin Hackett writes in, hey guys, Austin out of Denver, Colorado. Just wanted to say, love hearing about your trip last week. Have to disagree with Dave on Sheets Coffee, though. Absolutely top 5. Look, Alex can attest. I love coffee. I've worked in the coffee industry. I'm not putting it down. It's just absolutely top 5 for Sheets Coffee. I'm not going to go there. Questions about comments from Kevin Colbert from preseason. Wonder if you think team will show preference to guys who played last year versus opt-outs. And additionally, now that it certainly seems Ben is coming back and Colbert said the class was strong at tackle, do you think that'll be the first position of need? Did any big-name tackles opt out last season?
I don't know if any did. I'm sure someone did that I just don't remember because there was a slew of names. To Colbert's point, though, sure, I think that's good to bring that up. We can't forget about that. I mean, Colbert made it pretty clear the guys who opted out or didn't play are going to be at a disadvantage in the Steelers' eyes throughout this process. And so we talk about somebody like a big name for that, not a tackle, but quarterback Trey Lance that played 1 game last year for North Dakota State. How much is that going to hurt him in this process? It probably will. So that's one of the 2 names that I've circled for the, figure out if he's the guy conversation, Lance and Mac Jones. And so I think Lance will be hurt to some degree by only playing in 1 game this past season.
All right. Let's see. Bryce writes in the 80s question. Alex, you've used the phrase, we'll be back to the 80s when Ben retires. Mm-hmm. So it got me thinking, Dave, what do you think was the best team the Steelers had in the 80s, and why do you choose that particular season? Man, I don't know, what, 83 was it?
You're going to ask probably the wrong guy here for a specific years in the 80s.
Well, didn't they go something like 10 and something in 1983? One of the close to the end of Bradshaw right there. I mean, as far as success goes, that would probably be it. I mean, there wasn't a lot overall. What did they do in 1980? Let's see. They went 10-6. I was right. In 1983, they won the AFC Central Division. Bradshaw, Harris were still there as well too. Let's see. No, Bradshaw only played 1 game that season. Was
that was the final year.
Right. So it was mostly Cliff Stout. So I think the fact that they were able to do that, and for some reason, 1983 is always kind of stuck in my head as, the last hurrah or last really, during the 80s there. So, I mean, there was a lot of middling teams there in the 80s, later part of the 80s, right?
Yeah, some people could argue 89, that terrible start, 0-2, lose 51-0 to the Browns, and they made the playoffs in the divisional game that year. So you could even argue that was just the best year because they had such a terrible start and overcame that.
That's a good point. Jerry Thrash writes in, regarding quarterback Kyle Trask, Mac Jones, my comp for Trask, having not seen him play too much, would be less poised Chad Pennington. However, I have to say his bowl game was very disappointing. Let's see. For wide receiver contextualization, I would love to hear your breakdown on Brandon Smith from Iowa. All right. I don't think I've watched anything on him. Marset gets most of the glare from scouts because of his speed. I feel that he is a soft receiver that relied more on his speed. Blah, blah, blah. Brandon Smith has a large frame, good, not great speed, but very good hands. All right, we'll definitely at some point during this process probably be looking at Brandon Smith on the site there. I'm not understanding if there's much of a I think it's more of a comment about Trask, I think, being hectic, became sloppy in his footwork, which I think caused him to miss receivers and lose his fundamentals. I would not want any part of him in a Steeler uniform. Jerry from San Jose. Jerry Thrash is a new name, I think. I don't think we've heard from Jerry before, have we?
I don't believe so. I think of James Thrash whenever I think of Jerry Thrash, so I'm maybe getting confused on my own end over here.
Let's see. Tyler Moore, can you explain the reasoning for fans to be upset about the Steelers' decision to keep Ben for one more year? I don't see the immediate rush of getting a quarterback this year, especially with O-line troubles. To me, fixing the O-line is the number one priority, and then when TJ, Minka, Bush are on their big contracts is when the clock starts ticking on getting a quarterback who could get you a Super Bowl. I believe that's more of a comment from Tyler Moore there. Anything to add to that?
Well, he's saying, can you explain why people don't like the idea of Ben coming back? I mean, it's the stuff we talked about. Is this going to make it a Super Bowl contender? Probably not. And then people could just argue it's delaying the inevitable of either getting a look at Mason Rudolph or the mindset of not going after aggressively adding a quarterback.
All right, quickly, Derek Dimmy writes in, glad to have you guys back. He's going back to some old Dave T podcast, evidently. Back in April, let's see, he says, Dave T really thought Kevin Dotson could play center when Pouncey was no longer in Pittsburgh. He cited his intelligence and compared him to Dawson, albeit somewhat hesitantly. Any chance this is in the plans for the Steelers? That's a good question. It's a very good question. I would think they wouldn't go that route, but can you totally discount maybe the idea of Kevin Dotson playing center?
It's hard to see it. I won't totally discount it, but it really was kind of an emergency, just extra skill set in the tool belt, the way it was for Chris Hubbard or Matt Filer. I mean, if they had somebody else to play guard, then maybe, but they don't even have a guy to replace Dotson right now, unless Filer were to get re-signed and stay at left guard. So I just don't think that's going to happen.
Derek, I tell you, this is a good enough question that if I had a one-on-one with Kevin Dotson, I would at least pose the question if he's been talked to about it. So I think it would be a question worth asking Dotson. I'm with Alex. I think the likelihood of that happening is very slim, but yeah, I think it's slightly plausible. How's that, Alex?
Slightly plausible. That was you opened for slightly plausible back.
I probably did. Or Hellbound Fury won. Second, Dave T really liked Trey Lance. He had Lance as his number one quarterback over Trevor Lawrence when he talked to you all at the end of April. Thoughts?
Yeah, it's a guy I still haven't gotten back to. I know I need to. I keep saying that. I promise you I will. I just didn't do the report on Trey Lance, and so he hasn't been at the top of my radar. I know that Dave T loved him and raved about the lack of interceptions and just how productive he was there. We'll see. And I'll have to learn more about him, and we'll see if the Steelers are at his pro day. I imagine they will be, and we'll get a better gauge for their interest in him whenever that pro day comes around.
One last one, and it's from Ben Ben G, Ben in Chicago, and I'm going to get to it because he knows a way to my heart. Talking about salary cap here. Hey guys, what
I was trying to keep us under 2 hours, but I don't think we're going to keep it under 2 hours. Right?
Sorry.
10 minutes.
Rambling, stuttering Dave messed it all up. Rabbit hole Dave. Hey guys, love the show. You're the best of the bunch. When you mention roster displacement costs, what does that mean exactly? Is that the cost of a minimum salary player? Great question, Ben. Look at it this way. In the offseason, you have the rule of 51, where you take the top 51 cap hits on the team, plus the prorated, if there's any prorated signing bonus amounts outside of the top 51, those get counted in along with dead money on as well too. But just look at it as the top 51 cap hits on the roster. Now, the bottom number on that more than likely is going to be a minimum salary player, which in this case is $660,000, I believe. So if you bring in somebody from the outside, you sign somebody that's not on that in that rule of 51, and his salary cap hit enters that rule of 51, it obviously would push the lowest guy into 51 off of the 51. And then you figure out the displacement cost there. So if you sign a guy and his cap hit is, let's say, a nice even $1 million, $1 billion, no, $1 million, and you have the guy he's kicking off out of that rule of 51 is 660,000. Well, then you have a difference of what $340,000 would be your displacement cost there. That's how much your cap number. That's how much you ate into your salary cap amount. Is the $340,000 because you had a $1 million salary player enter the rule of 51, and you had a $660,000 cap charge player exit it. So always look at the lowest man on the totem pole in the rule of 51, and then look at his cap charge. Assuming there's not, obviously, because any prorated stuff in there would still count. So let's say you had $45,000 in proration that drove his cap hit from 660 plus 45,000. You get to any prorated amount outside of the Rule 51 still counts in the Rule of 51. You would look at the core cost, which would be his base salary of $660,000, and then subtract that from the guy, the cap charge of the guy that's replacing him in the Rule of 51. Did I do a good job of that?
You did, and you were the first person I'd ever talked to that explained roster displacement. I had no idea what it was until several years ago when you mentioned it. I never even had factored that into the equation. And it obviously isn't a big number, but it is a number that's worth factoring in to get these, get the cap equation correct 100%. So,
and I learned a valuable lesson when it came to that part of learning the process as well too. Is obviously when it comes to draft classes. People say, "Oh man, it's going to cost $5 million to." We need $5 million to sign the draft class this year based on the contract projections that are out there and all like that. Well, you got to remember, a lot of those guys are going to enter the Rule of 51 once they officially sign their deal. So there's a displacement cost there. So it's really, you don't really need the $5 million. A lot of times it whittles it down to like $2.5 million of actual cap space that you need because of rookie draft class displacement costs and all. So that's where a lot, and look, I've made mistakes writing articles way over the years, not properly factoring in displacement costs and all, and more specifically when it comes to draft class as well too. So it's like anything else. You make enough mistakes along the way, and you learn in the process, and then you try to become Omar Khan Jr.
I'm going to be the reason this goes over 2 hours, so I apologize. But were you doing cap stuff prior to the CBA 2 CBAs ago, where it was just open territory, open season for rookie contracts?
I probably pretended like I thought I was. Okay. I probably, like most people, thought I knew more about it than what I actually did. Okay. And then once you get into just studying it more and more importantly, trying to be right. I mean, anybody can throw out numbers and sound like they know what they're talking about. But getting, just understanding that having to learn a lot of those things in that 2011 CBA and always just having a love of numbers and intrigued by the salary cap and all, it just, the love grew into more research grew into more love. Onward it went. So, always keep a fresh copy of the CBA next to your throne.
All right, fair enough. All right, that is for today.
Is that a good ending point?
It's an ending point.
Absolutely. All right. With that, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex Kozora on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to donate to the cause, please go to SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button up right navigational bar to make a secure donation that way. Or if you'd like an ad-free version of the site, go to SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button, and for $25 for 1 calendar year, you can have access to an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com. Tons and tons of people have subscriptions that way as well, too. Send us some emails, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. Send us your angry emails. We want to hear some angry, mad at Dave and or Alex emails. I'm imagining there'll be more mad at Dave emails in there, but send them on. We'll try to read a few of them on the Friday show there. So until Friday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.